Jeff German, reporter for the Las Vegas Review-Journal. He was found dead in his yard, murdered. Who did it? Well, the evidence very much points to Robert Tellis. Video evidence, digital evidence, DNA evidence. It's all there. But he's on the stand this last week trying to tell everybody that despite all that evidence, listen to my story. My story, what's coming from my mouth is true. Joining me to discuss, Eric Faddis, defense attorney, former prosecutor. We're going to look at some of the testimony from Robert here in just a few moments. But up to this point in the trial, when we're recording this on the 22nd, so by the time you're seeing this, there may already be a verdict in this case because they're going to be wrapping up here pretty soon after cross. What's your take on where this trial has gone up to now?
You know, the prosecution has the ammunition in this case in terms of evidence. They put it in front of this jury. I think Robert Tellis kind of is making a last-ditch effort, a Hail Mary pass to try and get out of this. And I think we're going to talk about kind of how that's been going.
Yeah, not very well at all. Let's go and take a look at some of his testimony. This is his initial testimony on the stand, just kind of giving his pleasantries. Nice to meet you, jury, and why you should believe him, kind of being a little folksy here and there. Let's take a look.
So please tell us. Begin with your story, sir.
Thank you, sir. First of all, and excuse me, I'm obviously a little nervous. This is it's a day I've been waiting for nearly 2 years. You know, this thing's been kind of a nightmare, frankly. And again, I want to thank you for being here. And right now, I want to say unequivocally, I'm innocent. I didn't kill Mr. German. And I've got a lot to share with you all. There's been a lot of testimony, and my concern is making sure that you hear what I think about all these things, and you know what would the concerns that I have with some of these things that have been brought up. So during my testimony, I'm going to be sharing opinions. I know that folks like Zach Schilling and Mr. Mogg shared their opinions with you, and these opinions were, almost, I guess you could say, argumentative in a sense, right? Basically, Zach Schilling said, well, I'm an expert on shoes, and I think that those shoes that the killer was wearing are the same ones that I've seen Mr. Faddis wearing all the time, right? So he's arguing that he's an expert and you should believe him. And I think the same goes for Mr. Mogg, right? So I think that when I share an opinion with you, someone might say it's argumentative. And when I say something, I guess I specifically mean the state. But I think that when I share an opinion with you, that's my right. And it's your right to decide whether or not you agree with my opinion or not, whether you want to adopt my opinion or not. So I'm just hoping that, I'm not stopped from sharing with you what I have to say. And when I guess right off the bat, I'll share an opinion with you.
He's kind of the classic narcissist. I know we use that quite a bit, but it seems that he really kind of checks a lot of those boxes. My concern, is that you hear my opinion. I'm going to basically level it out immediately that my opinion is just as strong as these experts. Why would it not be? And you got to hear it. It's an interesting defense, and the fact that his attorney, it's a narrative defense. His attorney's not up there questioning him. What's your thoughts on all that?
It comes off as rehearsed. Certainly, he's thought about how he was going to start his testimony and the points he wanted to touch on. It kind of seems like he's trying to seize control from the outset of how this examination is going to go. In a way, it seems like he's kind of some people could interpret as talking down to the jury or sort of lecturing them and saying, hey, this is how it's going to be. Listen to me. And I'm just not sure it strikes the right tone for a person charged with brutal murder.
No, especially when you have a lot of evidence against you and your arguments are not very strong. Here's his testimony talking about the medical examiner in this case. Let's take a look.
The medical examiner testified about how Mr. German was murdered. And, I had to see pictures of Mr. German's body, in preparation for the case. And it's obviously it's ugly. But when the medical examiner testified, it's the first time I'd learned how Mr. Gurman was murdered. Now, I think it's the way that he was murdered speaks to, I think, something or someone who knows what they're doing. The idea that Mr. Gurman's throat was slashed and his heart was stabbed. I think that's, I don't know if anybody could just do that, right, without some kind of training, without some kind of expertise. So, and I'm personally not combat trained. And none of that. So it seems to me that when I heard that, I thought, my God. So that's, I guess, one example of like the type of opinion I'll be sharing with you.
My God, why would anyone think that slashing someone's throat or stabbing them in the heart would kill them? You need some sort of training to learn that. I mean, what the hell? What kind of arguments? This narrative, it's bizarre, but it also, it's par for the course for someone of this character. This is someone who also didn't have representation for a while. Eventually he got it. Clearly they're at odds because the way this is being presented is not common. So, his attorney's like, I'm not being any sort of part of your little narrative testimony over here. But it's fascinating because he just seems to have this weird confidence about him that whatever he's saying must be true.
That does come through, and I think you're right in terms of the possible attorney-client relationship and what that looks like. Usually it's question and answer form, and the attorney is kind of at the helm, and then the witness answers. Here, clearly, Robert Tellis is trying to take the helm, and coming up with some ideas that, you would need tactical training to take a knife to someone's throat into their chest. That just is not going to be accepted by any reasonable juror.
Oh, and you must be an expert at it too. And no, you don't, because you clearly cut your finger while doing this. It wasn't chicken fried rice, which he also tried to explain to the jury. And then after he cut his finger, he wouldn't go wash his car. He wouldn't go work out. Why would he do anything like that? But he did. And he also kind of incriminates himself here. Let's take a look at some of his testimony about the finger injury that he has.
While I was being self-represented, I attempted to seek these surveillance videos that included the video of me washing my car, or videos of me washing my cars. The judge granted the production of that.
Sustained.
However, I never received the videos.
The objection was sustained.
Oh, okay. So
The motion to strike is granted.
I believe the videos show that I didn't have the finger injury. If you think about it, if somebody has a serious finger injury, would they be washing?
Objection argumentative.
I would not be washing.
Testify about your own experience.
Sure. I believe I would not be washing my 3 vehicles if I had a serious finger injury. And as you've probably already gathered, you're going to hear about the fact that I was at the gym at around noon. And I believe I would not be working out with a serious finger injury.
After washing my 3 cars, make sure that you get that in there, because that really is relevant to all of this. Had to hit a little bit of bragging, little bit in there. What's your reaction to that testimony?
That kind of presentation just makes no sense to me. There's an arrogance there a little bit under the surface, and like you said, kind of bragging to the jury about his multiple cars. He's this public official who's been accused of extensive corruption, who was not reelected because of that, and now he's spouting off to the jury, kind of confirming what Gurman was reporting about all along, which kind of goes to his motive.
It really does. It's so fascinating to see what's coming through his prism and what he thinks is just, this is just, why would anyone question this at all? The way that, of course, when he cut his finger, the top of it off, his solution, crazy glue, not going and getting stitches like a normal person would do. No, because obviously that would create a bit of a trail. So let's go get some super glue. Let's hear his testimony to that.
So when I cut my finger that night, I had used scissors to cut, the super glue bottle had actually, the tip had dried. Sometimes when I have an open super glue bottle, the tip dries and I have to cut the tip. Right? So I had to grab scissors in order to do that. And I inadvertently left blood on the scissors that I forgot to clean off. But once I cut the tip off the super glue bottle, I super glued the tip of my finger together. I believe my healing process is such that I would not have had such a nasty injury for 5 days. Again, I can't speak to anyone else's healing process, but, that is what it is.
He has that magical healing power because he's just that special. But super glue, this time it inhibited that from happening. Thoughts on that?
He's just during this examination, he's really trying to explain away all of these things that a reasonable person would look at and say, "Oh, that seems pretty incriminating." And the way he's doing it, it's just not overly effective. The tip of a finger using super glue. There are some, DIY folks, or there are some folks who don't like hospitals and doctors and that kind of thing. But it didn't seem like that was his genuine position. It seemed like he was kind of trying to squirm out of these incriminating facts that the jury has already heard about.
Well, and the fact that the things he's trying to explain away don't really explain away most of the very damning evidence against him. Okay, you got some blood on crazy on your scissors after you cut. That's your story. Explain the hat, explain the Nikes, explain the blaze orange, explain the DNA underneath Jeff German's fingernail, explain your Google history. No, it's all these other, look over here, this is reasonable. Yeah, but it really has nothing to do with the damning evidence against you.
Yeah, it's kind of a red herring in that sense, and it doesn't go to the central issues in the
No.
case. The fact that you're talking about this super glue finger injury, what does that have to do with why your DNA is underneath this alleged victim's
Yes.
fingernails? Those are the things the jury wants to hear about. And juries are smart; that they can kind of see when someone is engaging in misdirection and deflection,
Yeah.
and self-serving explanations that don't really hold water. And I imagine that's the impression the jury has right now.
I have no doubt he probably used super glue and probably screwed that up too and got blood on the scissors. But what does it have to do with anything, other than he didn't go and get professional help for it? It's like, why are you even bringing this up? This just shows you truly chose not to go get help for it, and you did a DIY on your finger. It doesn't make any sense. He was also very surprised when he was arrested. Here's his testimony about that.
The search warrant was obtained, and I got pulled over early in the morning on September 7th, 2022. The officers came at me with their guns drawn, yelling at me, and I was basically coming from dropping off my stepson at school, getting ready to go home to pick up one of my other daughters and then take her to school. And so they just, out of nowhere, 3 police cars just run up on me from the back, and I just scared. I had no idea what was going on. I mean, they basically yell at me to just stand. I can't remember exactly what they said, but they're yelling at me. They patted me down. They handcuffed me. They threw me in the back of a patrol car. I asked them what I did. I asked them, can I call somebody? Can I do anything? I mean, I did this for over an hour and a half. Just tell me what's going on. Tell me what's, I mean, obviously at this point, I had my suspicions because of the whole, do all that thing. But they wouldn't tell me what was going on. They just left me there. And the whole time, my family didn't know where I was. As far as I know, my daughter was expecting for me to come home and take her to school. I was distraught already by that point. It was my understanding that if I went to the Summerlin Area Command for them to just take this DNA and to take photographs of me, that I would be allowed to just come right back to my vehicle and go on my way.
So is this like a ploy for pity or understanding? Oh my gosh, these 3 cops came up to me and they arrested me and my kids are expecting me. Oh goodness. Yeah, with the evidence they had on you, they're going to do that. That's how that sort of thing works. I'm not quite sure what his goal was with that testimony there.
When you're defense, you have to play the hand you're dealt, even if it's a bad hand.
Mhm.
And that's at least something that could get some traction. There's a lot of societal concern about overreach in terms of policing. And so that kind of thing, it is trying to get sympathy, but the way he's doing it, it just makes him look like he's casting himself as the victim here instead of the guy who was stabbed to death. And I think that he just lays it on way too thick, and it's not going to be well received.
Yeah, I don't think it's being well received at all. There's still cross to take place, which will be very fascinating to watch when the jury gets this. And like I said, by the time this airs, we already may have a verdict. But what's your prediction? Once the jury gets this, how long to return a verdict?
There aren't many cases that are a slam dunk. That's
No,
rarely seen
I
in
know.
criminal law. However, here the prosecution kind of has the goods, and Tellis with his Hail Mary pass in his testimony is just not connecting, in my opinion. So I think we're going to get a guilty verdict. I think the deliberation is going to be rather short.
Yeah, I'm gonna go like lens crafters in about an hour. We'll see. Hey, thanks for checking out the video. Be sure to follow us wherever you download podcasts, and especially Apple Podcasts, where you can get advanced episode and premium content on our premium channel right there. Also, be sure to follow us on social media so you don't miss any breaking updates on the stories that matter to you most. We're on TikTok, X, Instagram, Facebook. Just search Hidden Killers Podcast with Tony Brueski, and you'll find us right there. Again, thanks for watching.